The first thing she noticed was the scent. It wasn't the familiar, sterile aroma of their minimalist San Francisco penthouse, a blend of overpriced cleaning products and Nicholas's sandalwood cologne. This was different. A cloying, sweet perfume, like bruised gardenias, hung in the air, a foreign invader in her own home. Her hand, still holding the ultrasound pictures, trembled slightly. The images were a miracle, a tiny, pulsing bean of life that was their future. She had rushed home from the doctor's, eager to surprise him, to see his face light up. But the alien scent was a warning, a silent, screaming alarm. Life with Nicholas Sterling had always felt like a dream sequence. Their glass-walled penthouse overlooked the Golden Gate Bridge, a view that tourists paid to glimpse for a few minutes, and which Camilla woke up to every morning. He was a tech millionaire, a self-made titan with a jawline as sharp as his business acumen and a smile that could disarm senators. When they met, she had been a promising architectural student with dreams of designing sustainable, community-focused spaces. He had swept her off her feet with a whirlwind romance that felt like it was scripted in Hollywood. Private jets to Paris for dinner, front-row seats at Fashion Week, a proposal on a yacht in Santorini. He loved her, he'd said, because her heart was pure, untainted by the world he inhabited. He encouraged her to quit her part-time job at the firm. "You don't need to work, my love," he'd cooed, stroking her hair. "Your art is a passion. Let me give you the freedom to create without pressure." At first, it felt like liberation, but soon, the gilded cage began to reveal its bars. Her freedom meant her projects were hobbies he'd occasionally glance at, murmuring a distracted, "That's nice, darling." Her friends were vetted, their conversations subtly steered by his presence. Her opinions, once vibrant and fiery, were sweet, but ultimately naive next to his worldly pragmatism. He wasn't overtly cruel. His control was a masterpiece of emotional gaslighting, disguised as protection and adoration. He was the sun, and she was expected to be a grateful planet, orbiting in his magnificent glow. Getting pregnant was her idea, a desperate bid to anchor herself, to create a love that was unconditionally hers. When she told Nicholas, he was ecstatic, but his excitement had a possessive edge. "A sterling heir," he'd boomed, already planning trust funds and boarding schools. For Camilla, it wasn't about legacy. It was about life. It was about feeling a heartbeat that wasn't just her own lonely one echoing in their cavernous home. Now, standing in the marble foyer, the ultrasound photos felt like sheets of ice in her hand. The gardenia scent grew stronger as she walked towards their bedroom. Then she heard it. A woman's laugh, high and unrestrained. It wasn't her laugh. Hers had become quieter over the years, more measured. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat of denial. "It's the TV. A client meeting. Anything but this." She pushed the bedroom door open. And there he was. Nicholas, her husband, the father of her unborn child, was standing by the floor-to-ceiling window, his back to her. Before him, perched on the edge of their bed, was a woman with sleek black hair and a crimson dress that seemed painted onto her body. She was laughing up at him, her hand resting familiarly on his thigh. It was Isabel Moreau, a striking, sharp-tongued art dealer they knew from the society circuit. The world seemed to tilt and drain of color, every sound muted except for the roaring in her ears. They hadn't seen her yet. Nicholas was smiling down at Isabel, the same charming smile he gave to investors, but this one was different. It was predatory. Intimate. He leaned down and murmured something, his lips brushing her ear. Isabel giggled again, the sound now grating and hideous to Camilla's ears. Camilla didn't scream. She didn't cry. A strange glacial calm settled over her. She took a single step into the room, and the floorboard creaked. Nicholas's head snapped up. His eyes widened, the charming smile freezing and then shattering like cheap glass. For a split second, she saw pure panic. Then it was gone, replaced by an unnerving composure. "Camilla," he said, his voice smooth, as if she'd merely interrupted a business meeting. He took a step towards her, instinctively moving to block her view of Isabel. "You're home early." Isabel, to her credit, didn't flinch. She simply stood up, smoothing her dress, her gaze unapologetic, almost triumphant. She looked Camilla up and down, her eyes lingering for a moment on Camilla's barely there baby bump, hidden beneath her loose linen shirt. A flicker of something, pity or perhaps contempt, crossed her face. I went to the doctor," Camilla heard herself say, her voice a hollow echo. Her hands rose automatically, protectively, to her stomach. "It's a girl." The ultrasound pictures slipped from her numb fingers and scattered across the cold marble floor. Black and white images of their daughter, their promise, lay at the feet of her husband and his mistress. Nicholas glanced down at the photos, then back at Camilla, his expression hardening. The master manipulator was already spinning his web. "Darling, this isn't what it looks like. Isabel and I were just discussing a piece for the collection." The lie was so audacious, so insulting in its simplicity, that it snapped Camilla out of her trance. A laugh, raw and broken, escaped her lips. "Discussing a piece?" she repeated, her voice trembling with a fury she didn't know she possessed. "Is that what you call it? Was her dress part of the collection?" "Now, Camilla, don't be hysterical," he warned, taking another step. The classic dismissal, the word he used whenever her emotions became inconvenient. "Don't you dare," she whispered, a single tear finally breaking free, tracing a hot path down her cold cheek. "Don't you dare call me hysterical." She looked from his face, a mask of calculated concern, to Isabel's cool, defiant stare. She saw it all, the shared jokes, the secret glances, the stolen moments that had been carved out of her own life. The loneliness that she had felt wasn't a figment of her imagination. It was a space being cleared for someone else. Her home wasn't just a gilded cage, it was a stage for his infidelity. "Get out," Camilla said, her voice low but vibrating with newfound steel. She was looking at Isabel. Isabel raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "I think that's for Nicholas to decide." "Get out of my home." Nicholas stepped in. "Camilla, let's be reasonable. We can talk about this when you've calmed down." He reached for her arm. His touch was electric, a jolt of revulsion that clarified everything. She snatched her arm away as if burned. "There is nothing to talk about," she said, her gaze locking with his. The love she'd felt for him, the hope she'd nurtured for their family, was rapidly curdling into something cold and hard in her chest. It was grief, but it was also a strange, terrifying kind of strength. "This," she said, gesturing from him to Isabel, "is over." She turned, not bothering to pick up the fallen pictures of her daughter, and walked out of the bedroom. She walked through the foyer, past the cloying scent of gardenias, and out of the penthouse. She didn't look back. The closing of the heavy oak door behind her sounded like a final, definitive heartbeat. The San Francisco fog felt like a shroud as Camilla walked aimlessly, the city's iconic beauty a mocking backdrop to her personal apocalypse. The world was a blur of muted colors and distant sounds. She ended up at a small anonymous cafe, the kind of place Nicholas would have sneered at. She ordered a chamomile tea, her hands shaking so violently she could barely lift the cup. She had one life raft in this storm. Nina Delgado. Her best friend since their chaotic college days, Nina was everything Camilla had slowly stopped being. Fierce, independent, and utterly allergic to bullshit. Now, she was one of San Francisco's most formidable divorce attorneys. Camilla had once joked that if her marriage ever failed, Nina would get everything, including the fillings from Nicholas's teeth. It wasn't a joke anymore. She pulled out her phone and dialed. Nina picked up on the second ring. "Camilla, what's up? I'm about to head into court." "Nina," Camilla breathed, and the sound of her friend's name cracked open the dam. A sob tore through her, raw and guttural. "Whoa, hey, what is it? What's wrong? Are you okay? Is the baby okay?" "The baby's fine," Camilla choked out. "It's a girl, Nina. I just found out." "That's wonderful news. So why do you sound like your world is ending?" "Because it is," Camilla whispered. "Nicholas, he's cheating on me, Nina. I caught him. In our bed. In our home. With Isabel Moreau." There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end of the line, followed by a string of curses in Spanish that was both vicious and deeply comforting. Nina wasn't one for platitudes. She was a woman of action. "Where are you right now?" Nina's voice had shifted, shedding the friend's concern for the lawyer's sharp focus. "Some cafe downtown. I just walked out." "Good. Stay there. Don't go back. Don't talk to him. Do you understand me, Camilla?" "Not a single word." "What do I do, Nina? My whole life. It's all tied to him." "No, it's not," Nina said with fierce certainty. "Your life is your own. It was yours before him, and it'll be yours after him. Now listen to me. We know how he operates. He's going to try to control this. He'll apologize, he'll gaslight you, he'll threaten you, he'll try to isolate you. We cannot let him set the terms of this engagement. We have to strike first, and we have to strike hard." Camilla's mind was a maelstrom of panic and pain. Leaving Nicholas felt like jumping from a plane without a parachute. All her money was in joint accounts he managed. The penthouse was in his name. He had built her cage, and she had willingly walked into it. "He has all the power, Nina." "Bullshit," Nina snapped. "His power comes from his money and his influence. Your power comes from the truth, and from the fact that you are carrying his child. In California, that gives you more leverage than he can possibly imagine. But we have to move now. What do you want, Camilla? Tell me right now. What do you truly want?" Camilla looked out the cafe window. She thought of the woman she used to be, the one who sketched buildings that hugged the earth, who dreamed of traveling, who spoke her mind without fear. Nicholas hadn't just cheated on her, he had slowly erased her. An idea, insane and terrifying, and wonderfully, brilliantly clear, began to form in her mind. A memory of a conversation years ago, about a semester abroad she'd given up for him. "I want out," Camilla said, her voice gaining strength. "Not just out of the marriage, out of this city, out of this life." "Okay," Nina said, her tone steady. "Where?" "Milan," Camilla said, the name of the city feeling like an incantation on her tongue. "I was supposed to study design there. I want to go. Now." Nina was silent for a second, processing. "Okay, Milan, we can make that work. It complicates things, but it also sends a clear message. He can't control you from another continent. I'll start looking into international divorce statutes." She paused. "But first, we cut the head off the snake. He's probably blowing up your phone right now." Camilla glanced at her screen. 27 missed calls from Nicholas, dozens of texts alternating between desperate apologies and angry demands. "You need to call him," Nina said. "What? You just said not to talk to him." "You're not going to talk to him. You're going to deliver a message. No emotion, no discussion. You are going to state a fact. I'll be on the line, muted. I'll text you exactly what to say. This is the most important call of your life, Camilla. This is where you take your power back." Her hand trembled as she navigated to his contact. With Nina as her silent witness, she pressed the call button. He answered instantly. "Camilla, thank God. Where are you? I've been worried sick." "Darling, I am so sorry. It was a mistake, a stupid, meaningless mistake. Please, just come home so we can talk this through." His voice was a practiced symphony of remorse. Camilla closed her eyes, picturing Nina's face, fierce and encouraging. Nina's text came through. State his full name. Make it formal. Nicholas Sterling, Camilla said. Her voice was flat, devoid of the warmth he was used to. It made him pause. Yes, darling, it's me. Nina's next text. Tell him it's over. Our marriage is over, Camilla stated, the words tasting like ash and freedom. What? Don't be ridiculous, Camilla. You're just upset. We can get through this. We have a child on the way, our family. Nina's text. Tell him about me, your legal counsel. I have retained legal counsel, Camilla continued, cutting him off. Her name is Nina Delgado. Any and all future communication will go through her. A beat of silence. He was realizing this wasn't a negotiation. This was a declaration. His tone shifted, the feigned remorse evaporating, replaced by a cold fury. You're going to lawyer up against me, your husband? After all I've given you? Nina's final text. Hang up. Goodbye, Nicholas, Camilla said, and before he could utter another word, she ended the call. She sat there, the phone in her hand, the silence in the cafe profound. She had just detonated her life with a 60-second phone call. She was terrified. She was heartbroken. And for the first time in years, she felt the exhilarating, terrifying thrill of being in control of her own destiny. In her mind's eye, she saw the Golden Gate Bridge not as her home, but as a landmark in her rearview mirror. Her future was a blank page, and its first word was Milan. Milan was not the romantic dream she remembered from her art history books. It was a chaotic, vibrant, and utterly indifferent city. It did not care that her heart was broken or that she was 4 months pregnant and profoundly alone. The first 2 weeks were a blur of jet lag, nausea, and the bewildering maze of Italian bureaucracy. She found a small furnished apartment in the Navigli district with a balcony overlooking one of the canals. It was a far cry from the penthouse, but the peeling paint on the shutters and the scent of espresso wafting up from the cafe below felt more real than anything she'd experienced in years. Her days were punctuated by tense video calls with Nina. Nicholas, as predicted, was fighting dirty. He had frozen their joint accounts, leaving Camilla with only the emergency funds Nina had helped her secure before she left. His lawyers sent letters arguing she was an unstable, absconding mother, a narrative so vile it made her physically ill. He's trying to starve you out, emotionally and financially, Nina said, her face a grim mask on the laptop screen. He expects you to come crawling back. We just have to hold the line. The petition has been filed. He's been served. Some days, despair was a heavy cloak. Morning sickness and loneliness were potent companions. She'd sit on her small balcony, watching the boats on the canal, and feel a pang of such intense isolation, it stole her breath. She was thousands of miles from everyone she knew, carrying a child whose father was actively trying to ruin her. In those moments, she would press her hands to her growing belly, feel the faint flutter of life inside, and whisper, "It's just you and me, little one. We're going to be okay." The baby, her little Sienese warrior, as she had started calling her, became her anchor. This wasn't just about her own survival anymore. It was about building a world for her daughter, a world where her mother wasn't a victim. Driven by this new resolve, Camilla forced herself to rediscover the woman she'd been before Nicholas. She spent her days walking through the city, her old sketchbook in hand. She visited the Duomo, the Sforza Castle, and the art galleries in the Brera district. She started sketching again, not just the grand architecture, but the people. The way a nonna haggled for produce at a market, the intensity of students debating over coffee, the effortless style of the Milanese. It was during one of these excursions that her life took another unexpected turn. She was in a small library, researching social enterprises, when she stumbled upon an article about Luca Benedetti. He was a legendary figure in the Italian tech scene, a pioneer who had built and sold a multi-billion-euro software company. But instead of retiring to a life of luxury, he had become a mentor for humanitarian tech startups, businesses that aim to solve social problems. He was notoriously private and selective about the projects he supported. Camilla felt a spark of an idea. Walking through the city, she had become acutely aware of the refugee crisis, a reality often hidden behind Milan's glamorous facade. She saw families struggling to navigate a new country, facing language barriers and a complex web of aid organizations. What if there was a way to use technology to bridge that gap? An app that could connect displaced people with essential services in real time: legal aid, medical care, housing, language classes. A simple, intuitive platform that could be a lifeline in a moment of crisis. She called it ponte, the Italian word for bridge. It was an audacious, almost insane idea for a pregnant, unemployed woman with dwindling funds. But it was the first thing in years that felt truly hers. She spent the next month working feverishly, flushing out the concept, creating wireframes, and building a business plan. The more she worked, the more the pain of Nicholas's betrayal receded, replaced by the thrill of creation. She knew she needed help. She needed Luca Benedetti. Finding him wasn't easy. He had no public email, no office. Through sheer persistence, she discovered he frequented a small, unassuming trattoria near the university. One rainy Tuesday, clutching her business plan in a waterproof folder, she walked in. She spotted him immediately. An older man with a wild mane of silver hair, kind eyes, and an expression of deep concentration as he read a newspaper. She took a deep breath, walked to his table, and said, in stilted but determined Italian, "Signor Benedetti, my name is Camilla Reyes. I apologize for interrupting, but I have an idea that I believe will change the world. May I have 10 minutes of your time?" Luca Benedetti looked up, his gaze assessing. He took in her pregnant belly, the fire in her eyes, and the folder she held like a shield. He gestured to the empty chair opposite him. 10 minutes, he said, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. "And you must order the cacio e pepe. It is the best in Milan." Those 10 minutes stretched into 2 hours. Camilla, fueled by adrenaline and surprisingly good pasta, laid out her vision for Ponte. She spoke with a passion she thought she had lost, describing the user interface, the data security protocols, the social impact metrics. Luca listened intently, his initial skepticism slowly melting into genuine interest. He challenged her on every point, his questions sharp and incisive. He wasn't being cruel. He was testing her resilience, the depth of her commitment. He had seen hundreds of dreamers. He was looking for a builder. "This is ambitious," he said finally, leaning back in his chair. "The logistics are a nightmare. The politics with NGOs and government agencies will be draining. Most people would say it is impossible." Camilla met his gaze without flinching. "Most people haven't had their world burned to the ground. Impossible looks different from down here." A slow smile spread across Luca's face. "Ben, you have the fire. That is the one thing I cannot teach." He tapped his finger on her business plan. "This is a good start, but it is just paper. An idea is worth nothing without execution. Show me you can build it. Create a functioning prototype. Get just one, local aid organization to commit to a pilot program. Do that, and then we will talk again." It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no. It was a challenge, and for Camilla, it was everything. The next few months were the most grueling and exhilarating of her life. She poured every remaining cent of her savings into hiring a pair of freelance coders. She lived and breathed Ponte. Her small apartment became a war room, the walls covered in flowcharts and user feedback notes. She was a whirlwind of activity, her pregnancy a constant grounding presence. The baby's kick seemed to coincide with moments of breakthrough, as if her daughter were cheering her on. She faced endless rejection. Aid organizations were overworked and skeptical of new technology. Potential partners were wary of her, a foreign woman with no track record. But Camilla was relentless. Her own experience of being powerless had given her a profound empathy for the people she was trying to help. She wasn't just pitching an app, she was pitching a lifeline she herself had needed. Finally, she got a breakthrough. A small, community-run refugee center agreed to a pilot program. It was a victory that felt monumental. She brought the news, along with a working prototype on a tablet, back to Luca at their now regular table at the trattoria. He spent 30 minutes silently navigating the app, his expression unreadable. "The user interface is clunky," he said at last. "The translation algorithm has bugs. The backend is not scalable." Camilla's heart sank. "But," he continued, a twinkle in his eye, "the core concept, the heart of it, is brilliant." He closed the tablet and looked at her, his smile genuine. "I'm in. I will provide the seed funding and open the doors you need. But this is your company, Camilla. Your victory or your failure. I am just a guide." That day, Ponte went from being a desperate dream to a tangible reality. With Luca's backing, Camilla incorporated the company, hired a small, dedicated team, and secured a proper office space. She was no longer just a pregnant woman who had fled her life. She was the founder and CEO of a tech startup. The legal battle with Nicholas raged on in the background, a toxic hum beneath the melody of her new life. Nina was her shield, absorbing the blows. Nicholas's lawyers tried to use her new venture against her, painting her as a reckless entrepreneur gambling with her child's future. "He's terrified," Nina told her during a late-night call. "You weren't supposed to succeed without him. You were supposed to fail. This is not how his story goes." "It's not his story anymore," Camilla said, looking around her bustling office. "It's mine." A week before her due date, Camilla stood before the board of a major philanthropic foundation, her large belly pressing against the podium. She delivered the pitch of her life, her voice clear and confident. They funded Ponte's full-scale launch across northern Italy. 2 days later, she went into labor. She did it alone, with only a kind Italian midwife by her side. It was a long, arduous labor. But when they finally placed her daughter on her chest, wrinkled, screaming, and utterly perfect, Camilla felt a love so fierce and absolute, it eclipsed all the pain that had come before. She named her Siena, after the Tuscan city known for its beauty and resilience. Holding her tiny daughter in the quiet Milan hospital room, Camilla wept. Not tears of sorrow, but tears of profound, unadulterated joy. She had done it. She had survived the fire and walked out with the only thing that truly mattered. This tiny, precious life was her legacy. Not the sterling name, not the penthouse, not the hollow dream she had left behind. Her legacy was strength. Her legacy was Siena. Life with Siena was a beautiful, chaotic dance. Late-night feedings were interspersed with early morning strategy sessions. Diaper changes happened on conference room tables. Her daughter became the soul of the company. Her laughter echoed in the hallways, a constant reminder of what they were fighting for. Ponte was a stunning success. The app was adopted by dozens of NGOs, helping thousands of families find their footing. Camilla became a recognized name in the European tech world. The brilliant, compassionate founder who had built a bridge for humanity. The divorce was eventually finalized. Thanks to Nina's masterful lawyering and Nicholas's own hubris, his attempts to hide assets and slander Camilla backfired spectacularly in court. Camilla received a settlement that was more than fair. It wasn't about the money, it was about the principle. She invested every penny of it back into Ponte's foundation, creating a self-sustaining model for the company's future. Just as a quiet, peaceful rhythm began to settle into her life, the ghost of San Francisco reappeared. It was a crisp autumn afternoon. Camilla was in a park with Sienna pushing her on a swing when her phone rang with an unfamiliar U.S. number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. "Hello? Camilla?" The voice was instantly recognizable, yet stripped of its usual confidence. It was Nicholas. "How did you get this number?" she asked, her voice cold, her body tensing instinctively. She pulled the swing to a stop, holding Sienna close. "It wasn't easy," he said. I'm in Milan. I was hoping I could see you. See her." Camilla's blood ran cold. "Absolutely not. Please, Camilla, just for a few minutes. I need to talk to you." He sounded desperate, a tone she had never heard from him before. Against her better judgment, a sliver of curiosity wedged its way through her anger. "Fine," she said, her voice clipped. "There is a cafe at the Piazza Gai Aulenti. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. you have 15 minutes. She hung up before he could respond. The next day, she walked into the cafe feeling like a general heading into a treaty negotiation. She had chosen the location deliberately. It was modern, impersonal, and surrounded by the towering symbols of Milan's new financial district. A world away from the cozy trattoria where she had rebuilt her life. He was already there, looking strangely diminished against the backdrop of gleaming steel and glass. The tailored suit was the same, but he looked older, wearier. There were lines around his eyes she didn't recognize. "You look good, Camilla," he began, his eyes tracing the lines of her simple, elegant dress. "Successful." "I am," she said, her tone leaving no room for pleasantries. "You have 14 minutes left." He flinched. "I wanted to apologize," he said, looking down at his hands. "For everything. What I did was unforgivable. I was arrogant. I was a fool. I lost the best thing that ever happened to me." Camilla listened, her expression unreadable. The apology she had once craved now felt like a foreign currency for a country she no longer visited. "Why are you here, Nicholas?" He looked up, and for the first time she saw something other than manipulation in his eyes. She saw defeat. "Isabel. She left me, took me for a fortune. It turns out she was more like me than I realized." He gave a bitter, humorless laugh. "My company is under federal investigation. Data privacy issues, unethical practices. It seems my reputation isn't as solid as I thought." A plot twist she hadn't expected. His world was crumbling, just as hers once had. There was a time the news would have brought her a sense of vindictive pleasure. Now she just felt a distant, clinical pity. "I see," she said. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he continued, leaning forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "About us. About family. I see what you've built here. It's incredible. And I see our daughter. I've seen pictures online. She's beautiful, Camilla. She looks like you." Her guard went up instantly. "Where is this going?" "I want to be a part of her life. A part of your life. We can start over. Here, in Milan, I can invest in Ponte. We can be a family, the way we were supposed to be." It was the ultimate test. The offer of a repaired past, a simplified future. The father of her child, humbled and repentant, offering to help her carry the load. The old Camilla would have been tempted by the dream of a complete family for her daughter. But she was not the old Camilla. She leaned back in her chair and looked at him. Really looked at him. She saw a man who was sorry not for what he had done, but for what he had lost. He wasn't seeking redemption. He was seeking refuge. He saw her success and wanted to attach his name to it, just as he had once attached his name to her. A small, genuine smile touched her lips. "No, Nicholas," she said, her voice soft but unbreakable. "We can't." "Why not? I can change. I can be the man you deserve. The problem, she explained calmly, is that you are apologizing to a woman who no longer exists. That Camilla, the one who would have been shattered or saved by your apology, she died in our penthouse in San Francisco. I am someone else entirely. And this woman, she said, gesturing to herself, is not a project for you to fix. My life is not a failing company for you to acquire. She stood up. You may be Sienna's biological father, and for that reason, I will not keep her from you. We will arrange formal, supervised visitations through our lawyers. But you and I, we are not a we. We are not a family. We are a legal agreement. She looked at the man who had once been the center of her universe, now just a sad footnote in her much more interesting story. My 15 minutes are up, Nicholas. I have a company to run and a daughter to raise. Goodbye. She turned and walked away, leaving him alone amidst the glittering monuments of a world he didn't belong to. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. The only thing in front of her was the sunlit piazza and the bright, limitless future she had built with her own 2 hands. The world doesn't end with a broken heart. Sometimes, that's where it begins. Betrayal can be a brutal, unmaking force, but it can also be a crucible. It can burn away the parts of you that weren't truly yours, revealing a core of strength you never knew you had. My story is not about a fairy tale marriage that ended. It's about the death of a gilded cage and the messy, beautiful, terrifying birth of a real life. My legacy is not the sterling name I shed, but the Reyes name my daughter proudly carries. It is not written in the balance of a bank account, but in the thousands of lives touched by a bridge built from heartbreak. True wealth isn't the penthouse view. It's watching your child sleep peacefully in a home you created, knowing she will grow up seeing a mother who is not just a survivor, but a founder. It's the quiet confidence of knowing your own worth, a worth that no man can give you and no man can take away. For any woman who has ever been made to feel small, remember this. The most powerful empires are the ones we build from the ashes of what was meant to destroy us.
Billionaire insults a black waitress in front of everyone, but her response leaves him silent. What if one moment of cruelty could teach the most powerful man in the room about the strength that comes from grace? The crystal chandeliers cast warm light across the elegant dining room of Le Bernardin, where conversations hummed softly between the city's elite. Amara Wilson moved between tables with practiced ease, her 20 years of service evident in every graceful step. She'd seen it all in this upscale Manhattan restaurant: celebrations, heartbreak, proposals, and farewells. But nothing had prepared her for what would happen when Bradley Morrison, the real estate mogul whose face graced magazine covers, would speak words that cut deeper than any kitchen knife. The moment their eyes met across that crowded room, neither knew that this encounter would change everything they thought they knew about respect, dignity, and the quiet power that lives within a gentle heart. Sometimes the most profound lessons come from the most unexpected teachers. Where are you watching from tonight? Amara had always believed that everyone deserved kindness, regardless of the size of their bank account or the weight of their troubles. At 36, she'd learned this truth through her own journey, raising her teenage daughter Zoe alone while working double shifts, sending money to her aging mother in Georgia, and still finding ways to volunteer at the local food kitchen every Sunday. Her colleagues at Le Bernardin respected her not just for her professionalism, but for the way she remembered every regular customer's favorite dish and always asked about their families. Bradley Morrison commanded attention the moment he walked through the restaurant's mahogany doors. His tailored suit probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, and his assistant trailed behind him, frantically taking notes on her phone. At 42, Bradley had built an empire buying and selling Manhattan real estate, turning rundown buildings into luxury condos that pushed long-time residents out of neighborhoods they'd called home for generations. His business philosophy was simple: everything had a price, and everyone could be bought or replaced. The evening had started normally enough. Amara was assigned to Bradley's table, a prime spot by the window overlooking Central Park. She approached with her usual warm smile, carrying herself with the quiet confidence that comes from years of treating every customer as if they were a guest in her own home. Bradley barely looked up from his phone as she introduced herself and offered to explain the evening's specials. "I'll have the lobster," he said curtly, not bothering to make eye contact. "And make sure the wine is properly chilled this time. Last week, your staff served me something that tasted like it came from a gas station." Amara nodded politely, though she knew perfectly well that Bradley hadn't dined there the previous week. She'd worked every shift and would have remembered him. But she'd learned long ago that sometimes people carried burdens that made them speak harshly, and responding with grace often softened even the hardest hearts. As the evening progressed, Bradley's demands became increasingly unreasonable. The bread wasn't warm enough. The lighting was too dim. The other diners were too loud. Each complaint was delivered with growing irritation, his voice carrying across nearby tables. Amara handled each request with patience, bringing fresh bread, adjusting the table lamp, and politely asking the hostess to seat future guests a bit farther away. But it wasn't enough. When Amara returned with Bradley's perfectly prepared lobster, he took one bite and slammed his fork down on the china plate, the sharp sound cutting through the restaurant's gentle ambience. Several diners turned to look, sensing the tension building at the corner table. "This is completely unacceptable," Bradley announced, loud enough for half the restaurant to hear. His face had reddened, and there was something dangerous in his eyes, the look of a man who'd never been told no in his life and couldn't understand why the world wasn't bending to his will tonight. Amara felt her heart rate quicken, but she maintained her composed expression. She'd weathered difficult customers before, but something about Bradley's energy felt different. Volatile. As she approached to ask how she might make things right, she had no idea that the next few moments would test everything she believed about dignity, grace, and the power of speaking truth with love. Bradley's voice rose even louder, causing conversations at neighboring tables to halt entirely. "I specifically asked for the lobster to be prepared properly, and this is what you bring me? Are you even capable of understanding basic instructions, or do I need to speak slower for you?" The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Amara felt every eye in the restaurant turn toward their table, and she could see other staff members frozen in place, unsure whether to intervene or step back. The couple at the next table exchanged uncomfortable glances, and an elderly gentleman near the window visibly winced at Bradley's tone. "Sir, I sincerely apologize," Amara said quietly, her voice steady despite the humiliation burning in her chest. "Let me speak with the chef about preparing a new dish for you. Perhaps the salmon would be more to your liking." But Bradley wasn't interested in solutions. He was in full performance mode now, feeding off the attention and the uncomfortable energy he'd created. This wasn't about the food anymore, it was about power, control, and reminding everyone in the room exactly who he thought he was. "You people always have excuses, don't you?" Bradley sneered, his words dripping with disdain. "Maybe if you spent less time chatting and more time actually doing your job properly, places like this wouldn't have to lower their standards just to fill positions." The phrase, "you people," hit Amara like a physical blow. She'd heard those words before, had seen that particular look in people's eyes when they decided her worth based on her appearance rather than her character. But never in 20 years of service had anyone been quite so blatantly disrespectful in such a public way. Around them, the restaurant had fallen into an uncomfortable silence. The soft jazz music continued playing, but it felt surreal against the tension that had settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Amara noticed an older black gentleman at a corner table watching intently, his wife reaching across to squeeze his hand in shared understanding of what they were witnessing. Instead of backing down or calling for a manager, Amara did something that surprised everyone, including herself. She pulled out the chair across from Bradley and sat down, looking directly into his eyes with a calm that seemed to come from somewhere deep within her soul. "Mr. Morrison," she said quietly, using his name for the first time, "I can see you're having a difficult evening, and I'm truly sorry for whatever brought you to this moment. But I need you to understand something important." Bradley's mouth fell open slightly. In his world, service staff didn't sit down at customers' tables. They didn't speak with such quiet authority. They certainly didn't look him in the eye, as if they were equals. For a moment, he was too stunned to respond. The restaurant held its breath, sensing that something significant was about to unfold. If this moment touched your heart, please give the video a thumbs up. Amara's next words would either escalate this confrontation into something truly ugly or transform it into something neither she nor Bradley would ever forget. The dignity in her posture and the wisdom in her eyes suggested she was about to teach everyone in that room, including Bradley Morrison, a lesson about the kind of strength that money simply cannot buy. Amara's voice remained steady, but there was something in her tone that commanded attention from every corner of the restaurant. I've been working in hospitality for 20 years, Mr. Morrison. I've served CEOs and celebrities, homeless veterans and hard-working families saving up for one special night out. And in all that time, I've learned something important about people. Bradley's face was flushed red, caught between rage and confusion. He'd never had a waitress speak to him like this, with such quiet dignity and unwavering eye contact. You need to get back to work and stop. I've learned, Amara continued, her voice cutting gently through his protest, that how someone treats people who can't fight back tells you everything about who they really are. Not their bank account, not their title, not the car they drive. Just who they are, deep down, when they think nobody important is watching. The words hit Bradley like a punch to the chest. Around them, other diners had stopped pretending not to listen. An elderly woman at a nearby table nodded almost imperceptibly, while a young father dining with his family looked down at his plate, clearly uncomfortable with what he'd witnessed. You don't know anything about me, Bradley said, but his voice had lost some of its earlier venom. Something about Amara's calm certainty was unsettling him in a way he didn't understand. You're right, Amara agreed, leaning forward slightly. I don't know your story. I don't know if someone hurt you today, or if you're carrying pain that makes it hard to see other people's humanity. I don't know if success has made you lonely, or if you've forgotten what it feels like to be powerless. Her eyes never left his face. But I know my story. I know I work 2 jobs to put my daughter through college. I know I send money to my mother, who raised 4 kids alone after my father died in Vietnam. I know I choose kindness every day, even when people make it hard. Bradley felt something crack inside his chest. His grandmother had raised him after his own father abandoned the family, working as a seamstress to keep food on the table. He'd buried those memories under years of wealth and power, convincing himself that financial success meant he was better than the people who'd struggled alongside him. I know, Amara continued, her voice growing softer, that every person in this restaurant has a story. That young couple over there? They're celebrating their first wedding anniversary, and this might be the only fancy dinner they can afford this year. The gentleman in the corner? He just lost his wife of 50 years and comes here because it was their favorite place. Bradley's throat tightened. He looked around the restaurant with new eyes, seeing the faces of real people instead of just an audience for his performance. So I'm asking you, Amara said, standing gracefully from the chair, to remember that kindness costs nothing, but its absence can cost everything. Have you ever faced a moment where you had to choose between power and grace? Let us know in the comments. She paused, letting her words settle. Now, would you like me to get you that fresh plate of salmon, or would you prefer to speak with my manager? The silence that followed felt like the entire restaurant was holding its breath, waiting to see what kind of man Bradley Morrison truly was beneath all his wealth and bluster. He sat there, staring at Amara, feeling as if she'd somehow seen straight through all the armor he'd built around his heart over the years. For the first time in longer than he could remember, Bradley thought about his grandmother's hands, cracked and worn from years of hard work, but always gentle when she tucked him into bed at night. She'd taught him that a person's worth came from how they treated others, especially those who couldn't do anything for them in return. When had he forgotten that lesson? When had he become the kind of man she would have been ashamed to call her grandson? Ma'am, Bradley said quietly, the word feeling rusty in his mouth. He couldn't remember the last time he'd called anyone ma'am with genuine respect. I owe you an apology. A real one. Amara remained standing, her expression patient but guarded. She'd seen powerful men back down before, only to strike back even harder when their egos recovered. Bradley stood up slowly, his movements deliberate and careful. "What I said to you was inexcusable. There's no justification for it, no excuse that makes it right." He looked around the restaurant, seeing the faces of people he'd made uncomfortable with his cruelty. "I used my voice as a weapon when I should have used it to lift people up." An elderly woman at a nearby table wiped a tear from her eye. The young father who'd looked so uncomfortable earlier was watching intently, and Bradley realized this man's children might someday work in service industries, might face customers like the man he'd been tonight. "My grandmother raised me better than this," Bradley continued, his voice growing stronger. "She worked 3 jobs to keep me fed and clothed, and she taught me that every person deserves dignity and respect. Somehow, I lost sight of that. I became so focused on being important that I forgot how to be decent." Amara's expression softened slightly, but she remained professional. "Thank you for saying that, Mr. Morrison. It takes courage to admit when we've been wrong." Bradley reached into his jacket and pulled out his wallet, but instead of leaving money on the table, he walked over to the young couple celebrating their anniversary. "Excuse me," he said gently. "I couldn't help but overhear that you're celebrating something special. Would you allow me to cover your dinner tonight? I've learned something important about kindness this evening, and I'd like to pay it forward." The couple looked stunned, glancing between Bradley and each other uncertainly. If you've been enjoying this story, subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales. As Bradley made his way back to Amara, both of them knew that this night had changed something fundamental, not just between them, but in the lives of everyone who'd witnessed Grace triumph over cruelty. When Bradley returned to Amara's section, she was preparing to reset his table for the next guests. The restaurant had gradually returned to its normal rhythm, but there was something different in the air, a warmth that hadn't been there before, as if witnessing genuine transformation had reminded everyone present of their own capacity for both cruelty and grace. "Ms. Wilson," Bradley said, having learned her name from her badge during their conversation. "I know I can't undo what I said, but I'd like to do something meaningful to make amends." Amara looked at him carefully, still processing the remarkable change she'd witnessed. "Mr. Morrison, your apology was enough. Sometimes that's all someone needs, to know that their dignity matters." But Bradley shook his head. "My grandmother always said that true repentance requires action, not just words." He pulled out a business card and wrote something on the back. "I've been buying buildings in this neighborhood, and I just learned that your daughter is in college. I have a summer internship program for students interested in real estate and community development. If she's interested, I'd be honored to have her join us." Amara stared at the card, overwhelmed. Mr. Morrison, that's incredibly generous, but—" "Please," Bradley interrupted gently. "Let me be clear, this isn't charity. Your daughter would have to work hard and prove herself like any other intern. But everyone deserves opportunity, and talent shouldn't be limited by circumstances." He paused, remembering his own struggles as a young man. "My grandmother cleaned office buildings at night so I could go to college. Someone gave me a chance when I needed it most." Tears welled up in Amara's eyes, but they were tears of hope, not humiliation. "Zoe wants to study urban planning. She dreams of developing affordable housing for working families." "Then she sounds like exactly the kind of person our company needs," Bradley said with genuine warmth. "The world needs more people who care about building communities, not just profits." As Bradley prepared to leave, he turned back one last time. "Ms. Wilson, thank you for seeing the person I could be, not just the person I was being tonight. You reminded me that true strength comes from lifting others up, not putting them down." Amara smiled, the first genuine smile she'd shared with him all evening. "We all have moments when we forget our better selves, Mr. Morrison. What matters is that we find our way back." Bradley nodded, understanding that this lesson would stay with him long after he left the restaurant. He'd entered Le Bernardin as a man who measured his worth by how much he could intimidate others. He was leaving as someone who remembered that real power lies in how much good you can do for the people around you. 6 months later, Amara would frame the letter she received from Zoe's college program, announcing that her daughter had been selected for a prestigious urban planning scholarship, funded by the Morrison Foundation's commitment to supporting students from working families. Sometimes the most profound changes begin with one person choosing grace over retaliation, compassion over cruelty. If you enjoyed this story, please remember to like, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more heartwarming tales. Thank you for joining us on this journey of discovering that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the positive impact we have on each other's lives.